can actually disclose the social pandemic. Hello everyone, I'm Aayush and I'll be speaking on the topic, the world post-pandemic. Historically said that pandemic has opened the doors. And this one, that is COVID-19, is no different. Ultimately, it is something which is a platform from the one generation to the other. I arrived to LPU just 24 hours ago, and when I was walking to the campus, I was so very happy to see the people from all around the country, to see the different flags that is actually present. And you know what excites me? What excites is absolutely that there is a deep penetration of so-called globalization. There is a deep penetration of what is called interconnection between the society. There is a deep penetration of what is called culture. And interestingly, guys, when I heard the meaning of elocution, and I've been dreaming this, that what is actually a meaning of elocution. Again, 24 hours back, I found the meaning that the word elocution, or the word called speech, was first used in the sub-Saharan culture. Interestingly, well, guys, we are living on the Asian continent, right? And we are actually talking about elocution that was actually spoken to the African culture. That ultimately is a real point of globalization. And that is something which we absolutely need to keep in mind. Well, the thing that I obviously noticed, that what has happened after COVID-19 pandemic is, we change ourselves to what is called globalization to deglobalization. We change ourselves from what is called globalization to deglobalization. We change ourselves of what is called internationalism to a nationalism. Quote the points. We change ourselves from what is called internationalism to nationalism. We change ourselves what is called international geopoles to a normal geopoles. Well, when you look into the aftermath as what has been the aftermath of you turning into a globalized society to a deglobalized society, what is the aftermath of you turning into internationalism to basically focus upon nationalism? What is the point when you ultimately turn from the international geopoles to a normal geopole? And I'm just counting, I'm just getting started. Inflation. The lorries problem, the labor shortage, and the supply chain disruption that we have been focusing. Well, I want to go back in the history just 2 years back. I remember the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic. That was absolutely the year of 2020, when I ultimately noticed, well, the whole GDP fell down to minus 23.9. What was the thing that we were doing? The thing, we ultimately changed ourselves from what is called globalization to deglobalization. And the best example that we have is ultimately the Republic of Korea, the North Koreans. So that is ultimately which we ultimately need to understand. The next problem is when you look into the Brexit problem once again. So Brexit problem which ultimately occurred, that was absolutely the segregation of United Kingdom from the European Union, and the basic aftermath again it brought is something which is very concerning. But one thing that I would like to tell to all the peoples out here is, sometime or the other, what hurts the most? What hurts? Is it the temporary problem, as they say, or is it the permanent problem? I would say permanent problem still lies far ahead in terms of the temporary problem. And when I quote and when I look into that, COVID-19 is absolutely a temporary problem. I repeat, guys, COVID-19 is absolutely a temporary problem, but we are actually deviating in a post-pandemic world from a temporary problem to a permanent problem. How many of you have talked about climate change? Come on. How many have you talked about disinformation campaign again? How many have you talked about cancel cultures? This are, for me, are the real cancerous virus that has been existing. And it is not existing from the first year of 2020, but I would say that has been existing from the first year of the civilization. And knowing the fact that I'm talking why, because in this very civilization was the first civilization that emerged from the Indian subcontinent. And that is something which we need to understand, and that is something which we need to know. And when I talk about climate change, don't understand you must not understand the topic of climate change just as a problem. Rather, you need to understand that climate change is not a problem. Again, many of you question that, what are you saying? I would say climate change is not the problem. Rather, climate change is the expression of the problem. And again, it comes into this permanent problem. So, you need to focus that. Well, when I was preparing the topic of how I imagine the world post-pandemic, I find this very interesting line which was spoken by the External Minister of India, that is Mr. A. Jaishankar. He mentioned that differences must not turn into dispute. Again I quote, differences must not turn into disputes. And knowing the fact that we have 1.2 billion population and we have 8 billion population overall, we must focus upon that the differences in terms of the civilization, the differences in terms of the society, the differences in terms of the people must not turn into disputes. But when I ultimately look down the globe, and I'm probably sure that the globe might be existing here only, you'd find that what's been happening. I wonder what's been happening on the sub-Saharan culture. No one is noticing that because everyone is busy talking about the Russia-Ukraine. No one is mentioning about what's really happening in the Arab world. And why I brought this? Because you need to understand war or conflict or differences is just not limited to a battleground. It has this aftermath into food problems. It has this aftermath where ultimately civilization has been questioned. So that is something which we need to keep around. And that is something which everyone need to focus upon. At last, I would like to say, is who going to bring the change? Is it me, Aayush Pal, who will bring the change? Is it the mighty judges, the galaxy of the intellectuals who will bring in the changes? Is it the Loves Committee who will be bringing the changes? Notice that Hassan said. Is it the people out there who will bring the changes? I would say no. I would say it's the synchronization of Aayush Pal. Is it a synchronization of Labs? It is a synchronization of Acharya sir. It is a synchronization of we the 8 billion people. And we need to rise that. We need to change ourselves from the COVID-19 into a post-beautiful, prosperous and stable COVID-19 society. I rest my case. Thank you. Peace everyone.